Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. All individuals entering city-operated facilities, including City Hall, are required to wear a non-medical face mask. Those at the table are not required to wear masks while sitting, as long as they're distant 6 feet from anyone else. Once you leave your seat at the table, you must put your mask back on. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of a respiratory illness such as coughing or sneezing. If you are experiencing flu-like symptoms, we are requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. My name is Lynn Nesbitt, and I'm chairing this meeting today. Joining me on the panel are Cynthia Stevens to my left and Jeff Peich to her left. Our secretary today is Kara Balshaw, and our assessor is Jason Brown. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application have been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And use of cell phones is not permitted except by approval of the chair. And if you do have a cell phone, please turn it to silent or turn it off. Thank you. Please.
Please state your name.
Jason.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the full truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And Mr. Nelson, did you stand? For the record, please state your name.
Warren Russell Baldwin.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning, Mr. Brown and Mr. Baldwin.
Morning.
We'll start today with item number 4 on our docket, 14 Aaron Street. When you're ready, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The roll number is 13010975100. Subject address is 1400 Aaron Street. 2021 model value is $750,000. I'd like to make a recommendation today to reduce that to $721,000.
Okay. Can you tell us the reason for that recommendation, please?
Yes. How about I'm going to go through the attributes of the property, and then when I get to the income workup, I'll go through the changes.
Before you start, maybe I should ask Mr. Baldwin if he accepts 721.
Sorry, I have a hard time hearing you.
Sure. Mr. Brown has made a recommendation to reduce your assessment to $721,000, and I'm wondering
I
if
do not
you're...
accept that.
Okay, fine. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. So just a bit of background information. This was appealed in 2018. The assessed value at the time was $646,000. This was appealed by Colliers. There was a recommendation to reduce it to $600,000, which was accepted, and there was no municipal board on that. This is a warehouse property consisting of one building, one story with mezzanine. Year built was 2010. Wall height is 21 feet. Zoning is M1 manufacturing, and the leasable area is 7,110 square feet. Picture on page 2, newer building located on Erin near Wellington. On page 3 and 4, I have a list of 33 comparable properties, rental comparables. These are all similar size to the subject. All the wall heights are lower than the subject, and all the comparables are older than the subject. Subject being 2010, and we have 5 comparables at 2008. We can see a range from $7.25 to $10 a square foot. The 5 newer comparables are the 2008 comparables, all listed on the first page. You can see them at $10, $9.75, $8, $9.59, and $8.72. And these are all located in less desirable locations on Jarvis and Higgins. On page 5 of my property is my income workup. So the basis of the reduction that I recommended was to reduce all the rents. There's 3 premises. I reduced all the premises to $7.40. So the first premise is occupied by Kmart. These are owner occupied. The second premise at 2,783 is occupied by Western Lighting. And the 772 is the remainder of Western Lighting space. They demised it and made it a bit smaller. So that 772 is the remaining. So both units are 3,555 square feet. However, Western Lighting is only occupying 2,783. So that 772 is the remainder of that unit. All other parameters are the same. 6% vacancy, 2% expenses, shortfall at $3.75 per square foot, and capitalized at 6.5%. This yields the revised assessment at $721,000 rounded. I will note that this is a flex warehouse, which means there is office space in it. A little bit different than a storage warehouse, which has less office space. Turning to page 11, we can see on the map that this is located on Erin near Wellington. Aerial view at the bottom of page 11. It's a rectangular building. There's a little storage compound to the south and some overhead doors in the rear where you can see the cars backed into. Street view on page 12 of the front, and street view of the rear on page 13. See there's 4 overhead doors, 2 for each unit. I have a 2016 leasing brochure on pages 14 and 15. This is a 2016 leasing brochure. We can see they list some of the features. 900 square foot developed office space on the main floor of the building, which includes 2 private offices and an open office area, and an additional 900 square feet of undeveloped bonus mezzanine space. And then we can see they're listing the warehouse at 1,755 square feet. So if we add the 900, the 900, and the 1,755, that equals 3,555, which are both units are the same size. Ceiling heights range from 15 to 18 feet, 2 grade doors, efficient lighting, radiant floor heating in the warehouse, rooftop HVAC for the office, 200 amp power, and we can see that they were asking $9.50 per square foot net. There are some pictures in the leasing brochure on page 15, so we can see some of the interior on this. The warehouse at the top left, a couple of the office spaces, And the bottom left shows the mezzanine space. Permit on page 16, this is when they built the subject property in 2000. The permit was taken out in 2009. It was completed in 2010. We can see in the left-hand side in the red box, the total gross floor area at 7,110 square feet. You can see the total project value at $475,000. Once again, 10 years ago. We have some plans on page 17 and 18. 17 shows the main floor and the office and the workshop. Page 18 shows the mezzanine space. I did some perimeter areas at the top of page 19, so we can see the main floor is 59 feet by 90 feet. Those 5,310 square feet, and the second floor, which is the mezzanine, is 20 feet by 90 feet, which is 1,800. We add those together, 7,110 square feet. This is partially owner occupied, as we can see on page midway through page 19. There is one tenant. The other unit is occupied by the owner. On the back of page 20, we can see that they showed the tenant's rent at monthly $1,474 for 1,883 square feet, which equals $9.40 a square foot. So based on that, we're asking that the recommended value of $721,000 be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Baldwin, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Jason, the number of premises you're showing 3. The back of Western Lightning. Yeah, it's Western Lightning, not Western Lighting.
Okay.
There's a warehouse area that's occupied by Kmart, correct?
Correct. They demised the unit.
It's all warehouse space.
Yeah,
That's 772 square feet.
but it was demised. They put a wall in to separate the areas.
yeah, they just
so
put
that
in-
772 is the remainder.
So why would that, on your page 5, why would it have such a high rental value? There's no office space in it.
Well, that's why I reduced it to $7.40. The model looks at the size. Generally, smaller sizes rent for more. In this case, I don't think it applies, which is why I reduced it.
The wall height you have for 21 feet, that's at the front, correct?
Correct.
And the
It
back
does.
is-
It does slope to the
Yeah.
back. So the rental ad states, I believe, 18 to 15, something like that. So we measure it from the outside. The advertising brochure measures it from the inside. Yeah, they're stating 15 to 18.
The second floor mezzanine on both sides is semi-finished, right, with a low ceiling height, is that correct?
That's correct. There's some pictures on page 14, I believe, 15, bottom left-hand corner. So it is drywalled. It is finished.
The floor, what's on the floor?
I'm unaware.
So you don't know if it's plywood?
Unaware.
Okay. In your comparables, how many of them have elevators?
Have validators?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, you've got 33 comparables. How many of those comparables have elevators in them?
Oh, elevators. Unaware.
You don't know? Do you know if any other comparables are exempt from school taxes?
I don't.
So if I was to tell you that the property on Higgins Avenue doesn't pay school taxes, you wouldn't know whether that was true or false?
I do know that there's a college in there, so that would make sense, but I don't think it would affect the rent that much.
And then the properties, your comparables from 29 to 32, you don't know whether those buildings have elevators. They're 2-story building, correct?
I'm unaware. I was just looking at area, square footage, wall height, and age.
So if they had elevators in them, they wouldn't be comparable to the subject property, would they?
It depends on how many stories it is. I mean, this is only 2 stories. It's pretty rare to have a 2-story with an elevator.
So you're not familiar with those properties?
I have 33 comparables. They all show that the rent range is from $7.25 to $10.
Okay, comparable 29. Do you know the tenant in there? 403 McPhillips?
403. It's a church.
Correct. So the rent paid in 2016 was 9, and the rent 2 years later that was negotiated for another space was $1 less, right?
2 years later, that would be post-reference 2018.
A little over a year later, the rent was lower, right?
I'm unaware of that.
What's right in your report?
403, there's only one rent for
403 went for 9, and then over a year later,
That's 443 McPhillips.
443.
Those are two different properties. 403 and 443.
Same building.
Oh, it is same roll number. Yeah, no. But then again,
But the rent went down over that period, right?
yeah. Maybe it was less desirable space. I don't know. There's a lot of variables that come into play.
Okay, and then 445 and 13 went for 9, and then in September of 15, it went for 775. That's in the same building as the other two, right?
Yeah. Looks
So
like there's a
it's
range.
showing a decrease in rents.
A range from $7.75 to $9 in that building.
So it's showing a decrease in rents, correct?
Potentially. I mean, in 2015, they signed for $7.75, and then 2 years later, they signed for $8, so that's not decreasing.
So you're saying 775 for comparable 32, and then where's the other?
Well, 2 years later, in 17, they signed one for $8, which is higher than $7.75.
Do you know how much office space is in any of these comparables in particular?
I do not. They're all flex warehouses.
They're all which?
They're all flex warehouses, to my knowledge.
Okay. So the properties at 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, all have elevators. You wouldn't be able to say yes or no on that, eh?
I'm unaware.
On the Collier's listing.
Yeah.
Do you know how long it took to find the present tenant in this building based on that listing?
Well, the listing was from 2016, and it looks like they signed the lease in 2017. So in February 2017, so less than a year.
Yeah, the owner told me last night it was on the market for a year and a half to find a tenant for the tenant. The rate was significantly less than the asking rate.
I mean, sometimes when you're asking for a higher rate, it takes a longer time to get a tenant. I'm only using 740. They were asking 950. So if they were asking 740, it probably would have been leased.
What you ask and what you get is two different things. Over on page 7, you're talking capitalization rates. Are any of those capitalization rates derived from small, partially tenant occupied buildings?
I don't believe capitalization rates in question today. We're using the same capitalization rate, are we not?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm at 6 and you're at
We're both at 6.5.
7.5.
We're both at 6.5. Page 7 of your evidence.
Going over to page 8 of your report. Comparable number 2, or the second one, 235 Watt Street. Why didn't you use the higher sale price?
That was the sale price that was registered in land titles.
Okay, but what about the sale price that went through in September 17 for $695,000? Why didn't you use that sale?
Just pulling up the sales right now. I'm unaware.
Not aware of that sale either?
It's possible that we were calculating these cap rates before that sale came out. That was in late 17.
Did the roof on that building change, roof line?
On which one?
225 watt.
I'm unaware.
So you're not familiar with the building? You haven't seen it?
No.
Do you know the amount of office space in there?
I do not.
Is the office space, you wouldn't know whether the office space was greater than the warehouse space, right?
I don't.
So if I told you it was, you wouldn't be able to contradict me.
I mean, once again, you're asking capitalization rate questions here, and the cap rate's not even in dispute, so.
No, but the information isn't entirely correct.
I mean,
On page 9, you've got 9 comparables. They don't mean anything to me because there's no addresses.
Okay.
I mean, Portage Avenue and Main Street are very long streets that could be anywhere. I mean, it doesn't tell me anything about these properties because I can't relate to them because there's no
We're
address.
just showing that we did do a extensive survey of all types of properties, and that in the results show that 2% non-recoverable is an expense allowance that we're using. And
That's
once again,
not necessarily a market, that's an assessment.
I mean, once again, that's not in contention. You're using 2% as well on your workup, so I'm not sure.
Well, I know when I had my building downtown, nobody did the management for me. I don't know why the city doesn't allow a management fee. So there's no percentage of office space shown in any of your comparables, and that can vary quite a bit, particularly in the 403 McPhillips where the church is. It probably wouldn't be very much office space in that if it was rented to a church. 620. Your comparable number 12 and 14.
What's the address on those? They're not numbered on my brief.
Pardon me?
Could you say the address, please, because they're not numbered?
625A, which is 625A Erin Avenue, and 625B Erin Avenue.
Okay.
So the first one, 625, rented in November 1st, 13 for $10, and then the other part of the building, just a little bit after the subway property was rented out, the rent was $7.25 a square foot.
That's correct.
That's a drop of $2.75 a square foot.
Yeah, I mean, it was also $9.75 in 16 and $7.81.
That's a different building.
Different spaces get different rents.
615 is not part of 625 or 6A and B. 615 is another different building.
I mean, it's a 1977 building.
Yeah, it's not a bad
We're still
looking
getting
building.
$7.25. It's pretty good.
Over on page 5, you've got premises ID.
Yeah.
Just for my own knowledge, what do those numbers represent?
They're just internal.
Internal.
Each premise has its own internal.
Okay.
ID.
Because they don't line up with the business tax or the
No, they
business phone number.
don't. They're just internal for us,
Okay.
our own record keeping.
Over on page 8, at the bottom there, you have 4 comparables. Do you think the subject property is in the same market as a $24 million building?
Once again, I mean, it says right at the top, these are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. It's just,
So why are they in there then?
well, if you would read it, it would say that it's just an example of some of the sales we're seeing in the marketplace. Once again, cap rate's not in dispute today, so I'm not sure what this line of questioning is.
I mean, I could buy 3 of those properties, but I couldn't buy the last one. And the last one, do you know if it has retail in it?
I know.
The same question regarding the one in McPhillips. Is there retail in that office warehouse building?
I don't.
You don't know? On the expense and income question there, I guess the office, or Margaret, when she filled that out, she doesn't really understand net rent. Because that's not really a net rent, even though she ticked the box for net rent. Because there's some things that aren't recovered from the tenant. Anyway, I have one further question. Have you been inside the civic property?
I have not.
You haven't?
No, I mean,
Okay.
we have, the department has, I have not.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions?
On your comps, so you've chosen comps that compare to the individual spaces in the building rather than the entire size of the building.
That's correct.
And so are any of these, are you aware, are most of these single tenant properties?
There's probably a mix of single and multi-tenant.
Okay, so some of these may have multi-tenants in a smaller space then.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe my biggest comp is 5,000, which is
Yeah.
under the size of the entire building.
But you're not sure which is, okay.
This building was actually designed to be 4 units, if you look at the blueprints near the back, but they decided to do 2 in the end, both 3,500 square feet.
Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Mr. Peich, do you have any questions?
Yeah, would you mind restating how you arrived at the $7.40?
Yes.
Like
So-
recommendation?
On page 5, we can see the 3 different premises.
Yes.
So the model generally will look, the smaller areas will get higher rents. So the 772 at 960 to me didn't make sense just because it was left over from the unit that was demised. I just felt it was more prudent to use 740 for the whole building.
And the 740, that's the rented, the occupied by a renter?
Actually, that's a model-driven value.
That's a model-driven.
But that is for the owner-occupied portion.
That's
The second premise at 2,783 is the rented portion. And they're showing 940 on the income and expense mailer for that.
okay. Thank you. No other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Peich, and I have no questions. Mr. Bowman, your presentation when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I inspected the property on the 26th of June, 2020. When it was originally designed, it was set up to be 4 units, and right now it's just the kind of the south half and the north half. Kmart took some space at the rear of the Western Lighting in their warehouse area, which that warehouse area in Western Lightning was 651 square feet, and it's just warehouse space. It's got 2 walls that were added just to partition the space off. The assessment on the subject property increased 25%. When the owner signed the lease in 17, he's bound by the terms of the lease, and he can't raise the rent in this particular lease. So he's expected to make up for the difference in the assessment and resulting property taxes. When you have leases, you're not, some leases might give you an increase in rent every couple of years or something, depending on how the lease is written. But this one here, there's no increase in rent for the 5-year period. So an increase of 25% in assessment has to be made up by the property owner. And when this was vacant for a year and a half, it cost the property owner roughly $27,000 in property taxes to own the building. The west side of Erin has a lane, on the east side of Erin doesn't have a lane, and the east side of Erin is 200 feet, and the west side of Erin, the lots are around 90 feet deep. It's pretty popular for people that are, have small businesses. Over on page 4, Kmart has an office on the front portion of the building, which is the front office portion is about 20 feet front to back. And then there's a jog for the center stairwell, and there's a jog for the stairway on the south side and the north side. So the gross area of the building is reduced by the amount of stairs in the building, and the usable area is reduced. And then on the second floor goes over the entrances, because there's two means of access to each side on the second floor. And the second floor space is yeah, it has plywood on the floor and it's painted drywall and has a low ceiling height. It's just surface mounted fluorescent lights. The back of the warehouse and each space is painted drywall, including the ceiling. And there's 2 overhead doors per tenant and 2 200 amp panels per tenant. I mean, it's not a bad little space. And then in the warehouse space, there's a lunchroom and a washroom. Over on page 7 is the calculations of the square footage of the building. My numbers and Chase's numbers are fairly close. His plan area is 5310, mine's 5330. His gross floor area is 7110, I'm at 7140, so there's not really much of a disagreement there. But when you get into the what the tenants have, it's all outlined on page 5. My total usable area, close to the bottom on page 5, is 6830. That takes out all the jogs that wouldn't be included in the rentable area. That's where I differ with the city assessment department. Over on page 6, when this lease was negotiated with Western Lightning, they really didn't want the second floor, so the second floor was thrown in at $1.35 a square foot. They use it for dead storage. And the usable area of the second floor is 765 per side, 900 gross. If you take the stairways out, that reduces the space. When you're looking at the rental value, you can look at it based on the main floor area, or you can to include the second floor, or you can base it on the total area. If you base it on the main floor area, the rental value is $6.40 a square foot, which is probably the way most people would treat it, because the second floor is not fully finished and it's not really the same finishing or quality of finishing that you find on the main floor. So you're going to express the rate based on the main floor area to include the second floor. Second floor space is not as valuable. It's harder to rent it. I found that out through my own experience having a 2-story walk-up building. In the Kmart space, the office space is 26.3% compared to, just a minute, I got into. Yeah, and because of the Kmart space having less overall office space compared to a Western Lightning, which just has office space on the front, that relationship between warehouse and office space has to be reflected in the rent. You can't apply the extra space that Kmart has behind Western Lightning. You can't put the same rate on that as you would have for an office and warehouse rental unit. So it's additional warehouse space, and that has a tendency to reduce the rate per square foot. So over on page 7, the main floor tenant for units 3 and 4, $6.40 a square foot times the main floor area gives you the rental that the tenant is paying of $17,779. That lease was signed on February 1st, 17. It goes to January 31st, 2022. The Kmart space, because it's owner occupied, I used the same rental value, portioned it based on the fact that there's more warehouse space in the Kmart unit. So prorating it, it came up with a prorated value to reflect the larger warehouse area, 537 a square foot times 4051, giving a rental value to the total Kmart area of 21,753, and using the city's 6% and 3.75 dollars a square foot times the vacancy times the 5330 square feet, and the same expense ratio, and I get a capitalized value of $542,000 and an indicated rate per square foot of main floor area of 101.69. Over on page 8, there's 4 comparables on the Aaron and Wall area. Aaron and Wall is a very unusual office warehouse strip. It's you don't find such small buildings in a lot of the industrial areas because the lots are just, they won't accommodate a small building, but it's got its own little niche in the marketplace. But all these properties, none of them sold for over $100 a square foot. Based on the assessed value of the subject property, the comparable rate indicated by the city is $140.71 a square foot. The last sale on page 8 of 968 Wall is after the effective date, but I wanted to use it because it's on the same street as the subject property. I prefer to stay as close to the subject as possible. Number 2 was listed in 18 for $400,000, or sold for $400,000. It was listed back in 2018. That's why that one was in. And then the other sale is sold in 17 and 12. But these are comparable buildings. They're much smaller. They would appeal to the same kind of tenant that the subject property has. And the land to building area ratios are comparable. The ages are fairly comparable. Comparables 3 and 4 are probably appear to be more comparable than the other ones. Well, the number 1 is built in 79, so 1, 3, and 4 are kind of in the same category as the subject property. Over on page 9 is a table. You can see the price per square foot, and you can see the assessed value represents $140.71 a square foot based on the main floor area. And if you base it on the main and second floor area, it comes in at $104.91, which is still higher than these 4 comparables. Number 10 is, or page 10 is just a discussion of the comparables. And then over on page 11, my final conclusion, looking at all the information I was able to gather, came up with a value of $595 based on the market value, which is higher than what I came via the income approach of $542. It's still a desirable building, but in my opinion, that's what the market value is, $595,000. Then on page 1, there's pictures of the subject property. Page 2, more pictures. 3 is the tax information on the property. Page 4 is information, assessment information of the subject property. 5 is a plot plan of the subject property. 6, pages 6 to 10 are the more pertinent details for the lease between Kmart and Western Lightning. On page 11, it shows the space that Kmart has in the Western Lightning warehouse area. The jogs, etc., for the stairs and all that aren't shown on this diagram, but that's what the tenant and the owner agreed to. 12 is information from the drawings. And then the location of the improved sales and pictures of the improved sales are on pages 15 to 18A is the zoning and the outline of the building and a photograph of the comparables. These comparables represent very good comparisons for the subject property. And they do not suggest that the rate per square foot should be 140. It should be closer to what I've said, of resulting in a value of $595,000. And that's my evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Mr. Brown, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So you're using direct comparison in the end as your reconciliation?
Yes, I considered market sales because when it's owner occupied, you don't know what the owner's paying or you don't have information on the rentals.
Okay, I'm just gonna start with your income approach on page 7. For the main floor tenant space units 3 and 4, you're using 2,779 square feet, despite the fact that the lease is for 2,783 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the actual rent generated from that number is the same as what is payable by the lease.
Okay,
And that includes the rent for the second floor too.
at $1.35.
Yeah.
Okay, however, on page 11, at the very top, you state that a market rental for the mezzanine space could be $3.75.
If you could find comparables, but that's what I would say the value of the second floor would be for storage purposes.
So that would be the market rate, which is what we're trying to find today, is the market rate.
Estimated. It's
Okay.
just storage.
Thank you. You have no rental comparisons?
I have none in the report, but I did come across some. They generally support the numbers in the report.
Okay. For the main floor unit, Kmart units 1 and 2, you lowered the rent per square foot based on a lower percentage of finished office space.
Yeah, there's not as much finished space. So I mean, in your lease, you recover the cost of
I mean, they have,
developing the space, and
they
since
have
he
the
has less
same
office
amount
space,
of office space. They just have less of a percentage because they have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
the number reflects the more weighted warehouse to office space.
Okay. In that same line of questioning on page 4, under the Kmart Refrigeration Limited, units 1 and 2, at the bottom of that paragraph, you state that the quality of finishing is better than the rental unit.
Yeah.
So they have better office space and the same amount, yet you've lowered the rate per square foot by more than $1.
To reflect the amount of warehouse space they've got in relation to the office space.
Okay. You're using 6,830 square feet total for the income approach?
Yeah, because I'm basing my rents on the main floor area.
Okay. However, the lease is for the whole unit,
Yeah,
even
well,
with the parts you've taken out, right?
I mean, $1 a square foot is not much for a second floor.
Okay, thanks. Direct comparison approach, these buildings are all significantly older than the subject. 1979, 1955, 1976, and 1976. Subjects 2010. So between 40 and 70 years older.
You're comparing, say that again, please?
The years built on your comparable properties are ranging from 55 to 79.
Okay.
You would agree that those are all significantly older than the subject?
Yes, that's what the market, that's the only thing you can find in the market is very few. It's always difficult to do appraisals, I found, in this neighborhood and the Clifton area, because there's just not a lot of them that exist. That's what you're faced with. But they're
And
still comparable. They would offer comparable space. I mean, I drove by all these properties and I look at them, and some of them are better maintained than others, but they would provide comparable use that the subject provides.
you had mentioned that the owner is on the hook for the property taxes.
He recovers the property taxes from the tenant.
Okay, but you said at the beginning that when the taxes go up, he's left holding the bag because he can't increase the rent. However, the property taxes are recovered, and that's shown on page 8, item 3.
The tenant doesn't pay all the costs involved in operating the building.
No, but it is a net rent, looking at this lease. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Hodge, do you have any questions?
They've been asked and answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Can you just explain to me again how you reached your rental rate based on the, like I'm looking at the lease and then based on the 940 that was shown in the mailer. So the mailer showed the actual lease was $9.40 a square foot. You said that maybe it hadn't been filled out correctly, or?
Oh, I had the drawings, I measured, the inside of the building, because you can't go down the side, and came up with the proper square footage. The rate I came up with was based on my measurements, taking into consideration where you measure from and how much the tenant was paying next door for their space. And that's how I arrived at my numbers. I mean, Margaret that would fill out the form, I told her I would help her fill out these things in the future. She doesn't understand how you measure, and I don't know whether she understands the lease or not, but it's a
You
very
based it on measurement.
Pardon me?
You based it on measurement.
I based it on
Smaller square foot.
my own measurements, yeah. I'm familiar with the BOMA method.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
I mean, if you look at her, how she filled it out, it's very, very sketchy.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
And thank you, Mr. Goldman. I have no further questions as well. Thank you very much for your presentation.
That's it then.
And you will receive our soon.
Okay, well, it's been an interesting experience for 30 years.
Mark.
I think the next go around of these things is going to be really, really interesting. The rents now, you can buy space for under $6. You're asking. So,
Okay, so we'll now proceed to item number 5 on our agenda. That's 595 Clifton Street. Mr. Brown, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Subject roll number is 13010881000. Subject address is 595 Clifton Street. I'd like to make a recommendation to reduce the 2021 value from $962,000 down to $573,000. This is an older building. It's been demised into very, very small office spaces that are rented like 100 square feet. Some of them are even 40 square feet. I just felt that this type of operation is a little riskier than a standard type of warehouse. So we adjusted the rents downwards to achieve that reduction. And I did have conversations with the owner, and I have email acceptance of that figure at $573,000. 573, yeah.
Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions? Thanks. Mr. Peich?
I have none, thank you.
Okay, so just to confirm, the original recommendation was $692,000, reduced on your recommendation to $573,000.
That's correct.
And what was the rent reduced to?
Don't know if I have that offhand. The rent was quite high at over $10. I believe it was reduced into the lower 9s. I don't have it with me though, I apologize.
Okay, thank you very much. Just give us a minute then. Okay, item 6 on our agenda, 1383 Spruce Street. Mr. Brown, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roll number is 13010402000. Subjects located at 1383 Spruce Street. 2021 model value was $1,006,000. I'd like to make a recommendation to reduce that to $890,000. Once again, this is an older building with a addition in 1990. The rear of the building, if we just turn to page 12 quickly, 12 or 13. 13 is actually better. The area that's shown as 6,187 square feet, is actually just cold storage. So we've reduced the rate on that to reflect the lower rates that are generally seen for cold storage. And based on that, I'd like to make the recommendation at $890,000.
Thank you very much. Ms. Stevens, do you have
No
any
questions.
Mr. Pike?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions. Oh, I do have a question. You've been in touch with the owner and the owner has
Yes,
accepted
once
this?
again, one phone call and multiple emails. And I do have confirmation at $890,000.
Thank you so much. Okay. Item number 7 on our agenda, 220 Soto. Mr. Sitkowski? Have you sanitized the space?
I did.
Also missed that.
So just before you sit, I'll have you state your name for the record, please. Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Mr. Sitkowski? You're here representing 220 Soto and 960 Powell?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with 220 Soto. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roll number is 0708126560. Address is 220 Soto Crescent. I'm defending a 2021 assessed value at $2,512,000. This is an industrial warehouse consisting of one building, one premise, one story. Built in 1985, 22-foot wall height. Leasable area at 30,662. Some comparables on page 3. My income workup on page 4, using a rent of $6.10, 2.5% vacancy, 2% expenses, $3.75 per square foot shortfall, and capitalized at 7%. This yields the rounded value of $2,512,000. Pictures starting on page 10 through to page, leasing ad on page 12. Through to page 16, which shows the income and expense information. And finally, on the final page, this was already heard in 2020. On January 17th, the assessment was confirmed based on evidence presented by the Assessment and Taxation Department. Based on that, we're asking that it be confirmed at 2021 value of $2,512,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sitkowski?
I have no questions.
No questions? Stevens?
I wasn't expecting to be up that fast. No, you know what? I think I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Pike?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Okay. And I just note that, am I reading this right? This leasing ad on page 12 is leasing for $895 net
That's correct.
per square foot. Okay. And you have it at 610.
Correct.
Has it been appealed to the municipal board?
It hasn't, and I believe that's why we're here today, is to open it up for the 2021 meeting board.
Thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Siggins.
All I want to say is I accept the value as presented by the assessor on this particular property.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, 960 Powell Avenue. Mr. Brown, whenever you're ready.
Madam Chair. Roll number is 0701097600. Address is, sorry.
I heard a noise too.
In traffic. 960 Powell Avenue, I'm defending a 2021 assessed value of $8,943,000. Once again, this was heard. On the same date as the previous property, Friday, January 17th, 2020. And it was confirmed, decision was based on the evidence presented by the Assessment and Taxation Department. So it was confirmed at $8,943,000 last year. We're asking that the same value be confirmed today. This is an industrial warehouse property consisting of 3 buildings, 1 story, built in 1965, wall heights ranging from 14 to 18 feet, and leasable area at 128,418. On page 2, it shows the subject property leases that were provided by the owner during our request for information. We can see the rents ranging from a low of $319. However, that is the owner occupier, from what I've been led to believe. So that's the lowest rent at $319. The rest of the rents range from $525 up to $650. Some comparables confirm this range. These are all in the same area, relatively the same age, same wall heights, and various sizes to correlate with the units in the subject property. You can see the comparable rents ranging from $6 up to $7. Page 4 of my evidence shows the income workup for this property. Once again, this is a flex warehouse. Rents are all in the mid to high $6 range, generating a gross effective income of $836,911. We've used 15% vacancy on this property. That's an override due to some previous vacancy issues. Expenses at 2%, shortfall at $3.75, and capitalization rate at 7%. This yields the assessed value at $8,927,000.
So can I just stop you there, because that's a different amount than you have on your front page.
Not by much, but sometimes things get changed when it affects value. I guess it's interesting. Let me just pull up last year's brief. Yeah, it looks like one of the rents got reduced in the income workup. So I guess I'm defending $8,927,000 now. 27,000 based on my workup. I'm guessing you're not going to accept that, Mr. Sikowski.
So are you recommending a reduction?
It's pretty hard to defend a value that I don't have a workup for, so I will make that recommendation.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm guessing you're not going to accept it?
I'm gonna have to put some thought to that.
Okay, I'll continue then. Our cap rates are shown on page 6. Industrial spaces for the city of Winnipeg range from $5.5% to 9.8%. Subjects at 7%, which falls in between the 20th and 80th percentile, which are shown at 6.34% and 7.8%. We can see the external sources showing a range from 6% up to 7.75%. I have some pictures starting on page 10. So this is located on Powell Street, which is off of Route 90 near Notre Dame. aerial photograph, this is a large building with multiple units as shown on page 11. Page 13 shows the exterior on the top photo and one of the interior photos for what looks like a doggy daycare. The bottom of page 13. Looks like page 14, there's a parts supplier store. This would be one of the interiors of one of the other units. A rental advertisement on page 15 showing asking price of $6.75 per square foot. Some of the attributes showing 5 loading doors, ample room for trailers, 16-foot ceiling heights, etc. Some of the plans on page 16 and 17 showing the layout of the property and one of the typical units. And page 18 shows the interior of a vacant space. Page 19 shows the net operating income of the subject property. This was the 2017 mailer. This is what was submitted during our request for information. I believe that says 755. I'm just going to zoom in on the computer. Yeah, $785.07. I will note that the net operating income of the assessment is only $624,000. So they are achieving a higher net operating income than the model is showing and what the assessment is using. Tenant roster on the back, page 20. And once again, this was heard and confirmed. I feel like going forward, it would be best to address any issues at the Muni board for this. So based on that, we're asking that my revised assessment
Recommendation.
of $8,927,000 be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Sitkowski, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you so much. So, Mr. Brown, this is a pretty old building. Is that correct? For it's about 55 years old.
Correct.
And in your opinion, would the age of this building have an impact on rents, capitalization rates?
Obviously, older buildings, that can affect the rent and the capitalization rate. I feel like we've addressed that. The rents we're using are not out of line with buildings of this vintage.
But the rents, that's my second question. I mean, you use on page 4, I believe you had mentioned that your calculations based on modeled rents and modeled vacancy allowances, other than, sorry, not vacancy allowances, modeled capitalization rates, other than the vacancy allowance, which you increased because there was a vacancy issue in this particular building. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, I'll note that on page 19, they're only showing 7% vacancy in 2017.
So why have you increased the vacancy allowance to 15%?
The vacancy was increased in previous cycles and it got carried forward. Going forward, I don't believe that that's an accurate vacancy loss for this property.
So if it's inaccurate, you're still defending that. That's correct. 15% vacancy allowance. So in short, I mean, there is a vacancy issue, or there was, or there is in this building.
I could change it to 7% if you like. Then I'd have to go for an increase somehow. I don't have enough time for that.
Thank God it's Friday. It's a long weekend coming up. I just wanted to, just to straighten that or make sure I understand this issue properly.
Yeah, it was a vacancy override that
Yeah.
got carried forward. I don't believe that it should
Okay.
have. So,
But
we are using.
you believe that it should be carried forward, and the department believes that it should be carried
I
forward.
can say that if it goes to the Muni board, I would not use 15%.
Okay, but in short, all your figures are based on models.
Correct.
Other than the.
Other than that override,
Than
correct?
that, other than that override, okay. And in this particular instance, it is a very old building.
Correct.
And you had indicated, I believe earlier, that that is one of the factors that could change the capitalization rate.
Well, that's why it's not 6%, yes. If this was newer, it would be 6%.
That's a joke.
No.
All right. So that the normal capitalization rate for this type of, if it was a new building, would be 6%, or is that?
There's a lot of variables that go into capitalization rates: location, age, wall height.
Land to building ratio. And
Occasionally, yes. Quality. There's a lot of variables.
And so in terms of quality, have you inspected this property, and what is your opinion on the quality of the building?
I mean, judging by the pictures, looks like it's been maintained. Interior looks, I'd say it's a standard 1965 building.
So even though it was maintained, you're still looking at the body of the building, the walls and everything being constructed back in 65 using the technology that was available at that time. Okay. I believe those are my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sikorsky. Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions?
My cap rate. I know there's an age cutoff for some of these. Do you happen to know what it is in this category?
I don't have that with me.
Okay.
I will note that I just noticed there was a sale in 2018 for $8,975,000, which is right before the reference date. So a good indication.
In your, was this an arm's length sale? The party that purchased this building was one of the tenants, right? Harris Transport?
That's possible.
It's possible, or is it indeed fact?
I don't have that information with me.
If I did indicate to you that it was indeed one of the tenants that purchased this building, so would that be considered as a non-arm's length purchase or sale?
I mean, sometimes when a tenant takes over, if it was single tenant, I would say it would definitely have an effect. But because there's how many units in this? 12, and they're only occupying one,
And
it might have a small effect on it. And they did not return a sales mailer to us, which would have indicated that. But without that information, I'll have to take your word for it.
thank you.
Okay. We got a little bit off there, but that's all. So you don't have the age cutoffs for the craps, and that's all.
I don't.
Yeah, it's pretty old, so I'm just. Although inside it doesn't look from what you've shown there. I guess the tenants are retrofitting this.
This was a Sun Max property, and that's who sold it. And they generally take a pretty good care of their building.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Page?
My question also relates to capitalization rate. Maybe just to broaden the question a little bit, I know that the city of Winnipeg has in its 80th percentile 7.8 cap rate. In what circumstance would a 7.8 cap rate be applied?
Once again, there's lots of variables: location, age, size, quality. I mean, it's a risk factor, right? The capitalization rate. So the higher the risk, the higher the cap rate. I will note that with the 15% vacancy that we've applied to this, that would bring the risk down because we're already addressing one of the risks. So 7 is fair cap rate.
Right, other questions?
Mr. Dunn, I just have one little question. It's about the leasing information that you presented on page 8.
Oh, on page.
15, 675 a square foot.
Okay, yeah.
When was this from?
That's a good question. So when it shows operating expense recovery, and then it says 2018, so I would assume this is from 2018.
Where does it say that? Am I missing it?
So on page 15,
Okay. I'm just looking for the date that you mentioned.
yeah, on page 15, they're showing some of the attributes of the building. So right-hand column, about halfway down, operating expenses.
2018.
Yeah.
So is this the 2019 act?
It's possible, which in that case, it would be post-reference. And
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Does the dog come with it?
can we play with
Cute
it?
little selling feature.
They're so cute.
It's rather large.
I mean, the actual rents are shown on page 2.
Okay.
There is a range, but as we can see, a lot of them are signed in 2013. The one closest to the reference date.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find
Oh,
your
sorry.
page 2, you
Yeah.
said? Okay, those are the actuals.
Yeah, so these were taken off of this.
Okay.
So what was provided to us by the owner. So we can see the newest one, April 1st, 2017, which is closest to the reference date, was at 650. So I don't feel that that's an out of line.
Okay, and we also have a June 1, 2017.
So in that range, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Mr. Sitkowski?
Thank you. So, I'd like to refer the panel to and the assessor to my brief, and I just want to go straight to page 2. Page 3 of the brief.
I'm sorry, your brief?
Yes, and page 3 of the brief, and this page 3 shows our work. And so we have no issues with respect to the rent. We have no issues with respect to the vacancy allowance, because there was indeed a problem with vacancy, and the assessor has confirmed that. We would like to add the 5% to non-recoverable expenses, but the main issue is with respect to the capitalization rate. And in our workup, we're asking for an 8.4% capitalization rate. Now, the reason why we're asking for this cap rate is that there's a building across the street to this subject property, which is almost an identical building. There's a variance in size, but it serves the same purpose as the subject property, which is, and that property is known as 961 Powell. And we appealed 961 Powell, and there was a recommendation provided with respect to that property. And we attached the result. Oh, first of all, we attached a recommendation on the second last page. The assessor recommended a reduction from $5,386,000 to $4,489,000. And you'll note that the cap rate was increased from 7%, which is the same cap rate that the subject property has currently, to 8.4%. There was no vacancy issue in this particular building, so the standard vacancy allowance that was used is 4% in this instance. So, and these buildings, as I said, they're located right across the street from each other. Very similar buildings, built in the same era. I think the subject properties, I think it's 2 years newer than the property that we that is across the street. So in essence, we're asking for equity, we're asking for consistency. So we're asking for that cap rate because when I talked to the assessor for that, with respect to that building at 961, the issue was mainly age, the quality of the building, and we feel that the quality of the subject property is no different than the quality of the building across the street, and therefore we're asking for the cap rate to be increased to 8.4%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Chairman. 961 Powell, the workup you're showing with the 8.4, you were involved in those discussions?
Yes.
And so you're aware that that building backs onto the creek behind it? And the rear portion of that building is actually sinking into the creek?
Okay, hold on. I was at the building. I don't recall seeing a creek. Is it possible for you to pull up the map?
I've got it right here.
You have it? I don't recall.
So I read the notes for that deal that you have put in your brief, where the cap rate was changed from 7 to 8.4%. And the basis of that deal was structural issues because
That was structural was that structural issues with respect to the parking area, but not with it wasn't with respect to the building, because the building is located a fair distance. There's a creek. I
right.
call it.
It backs right onto the creek.
Okay, so it's
If you guys want to bring it up on Google Maps, you probably could.
Okay, just give me a second.
You had a map in your brief, right?
That's correct.
Is it,
I'm not sure if it shows that one though. Yeah, it would be just to the south. You can't really see the creek.
Can we see? Yeah, I don't see anything.
No, not on there.
No.
Yeah, you can see it from the right-hand side, and then it swoops down behind.
Oh, that's the creek?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are two buildings on that property. There's one fronting Powell, and then the one behind.
Correct.
So the one behind is the one that backing onto the creek. Now, as I understand, there was no issue with the building. Was with respect to the parking area. Is that correct?
Just pulling up the notes so I'm accurate. I mean, I wasn't involved in these discussions, which is why I don't like comparing assessments.
Well, I'm not comparing assessments. I'm just asking for equity consistency, because my argument is that this building is built in the same era as 960 Powell. It's an old building, of course, 55 years old, and we're asking for the capitalization rate to be increased.
So the notes here from Tricia, who did the deal with you, says that the cap rate was changed due to structural issues.
She did not inspect the property, so I don't believe she inspected the property.
Are you saying she adjusted the cap rate with no evidence?
I don't recall her inspecting the property.
Okay, and this property did sell for $8,975,000, February 21st, 2018.
Our argument is it's a non-arm's non-arm's length sale.
So they overpaid by almost $2 million.
There was
almost $3
there was some
million.
other consideration because these companies these people know each other, and there's some other consideration, as I understand.
Okay, and this was confirmed at the Board of Revision on January 17th, 2020.
It was.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Mr. Page?
Are there structural issues with the property?
I haven't. I have inspected the. Sorry, I've been at the property. I didn't go inside the property. I drove around the properties. I didn't see any evidence of structural properties. When we talked to the owners, unfortunately, that wasn't a topic of discussion. If there were structural issues, they were mainly attributable to the parking area, to the concrete slabs that is used for parking. The building itself, I'm not aware of any structural issues with respect to the building itself. And furthermore, there are two buildings there. As I said, there's a building fronting Powell, and then there's a building behind that building which is much closer to the creek. And the one that's fronting Powell, there are no issues there.
No other questions.
Ms. Stevens?
So your recollection is that the city increased its cap rate by that much based on age?
Well, not just age, but they did. I agree with Mr. Brown that there was an issue with the parking pad. That,
And the property that we're looking at today does not have any of these issues.
as far as I know, no.
Um, And in terms of the sale, you're saying they knew each other, but what does that mean?
As
They
I
in
understand,
business together? They related?
they're not related. As I understand it, they do business together. The evidence that was shown is that the purchaser of the building did and does have a space in this particular building, Towers Transport.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I have no additional questions. Thank you, Mr. Sikowski. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, council members.
Receive our order of
Great
business.
weekend.
Thank you.
And that concludes this hearing. Thank you.